Hello, everyone. Happy full moon. Happy full moon in Libra. How are we all feeling? Goodness me, it's been a bit of an intense build-up, hasn't it? With the equinox and the full moon and the eclipse, and then this rolling boil, as someone said today. I was like, oh, that's such an apt phrase, this rolling boil of energy, coming up to the total eclipse in Aries on the 8th of April. It's a really interesting one, and I've had the pleasure and the joy of working with people the whole of this month in a coaching container in Anchor Your Light coaching, which I run maybe 3 times a year or so, and it's been profound. It's been profound and very moving as a facilitator to hold one-to-one consistent appointments with people and see the progress, see the peaks and the valleys, the ebbs and flows, and just see how even though we all have our own individual life experience, how there always does seem to be a theme and an undercurrent, which we know exists anyway. We know it is the collective, right? We know it like the collective energy. And a lot of us can underestimate that, but it's so fascinating. So fascinating. Now, some of the things that I've been noticing, and I wonder if this is helpful to share, and this is kind of the intention why I'm doing this video right now, is to offer a little bit of observation from my perspective in terms of some of the similarities that we all seem to be experiencing. And of course, there will be cosmic invitations and cosmic influences with the themes of the nodes, right? The North and South node of Libra and Aries. So, of course, as we've already heard, relationships, love, beliefs around that, karmic energies, things that no longer resonate, ways that we haven't loved ourselves unconditionally, ways that we've judged or shamed ourselves, our ability to love ourselves as we are definitely coming up right now. Relationships that haven't perhaps been balanced or just or as smooth and flowing as what relationships should be. So another way of saying this is that if relationship is formed on a trauma bond, or if they're formed in a codependency or anything like that, or a karmic pattern, an attachment style, they're definitely coming to the surface right now. And relationships are a really interesting one because we can get so hung up, so caught up on the characters, the people in it, when really it's more about the energy. It's more about the energy. So if you're finding your relationships getting a little bit challenged, a little bit stressed, yes, this is a time of transition. This is a time of alchemy and transmutation, transcendence. And as many people have seen different images and memes, transcendence, transcend, trans end. It's the end of the hypnotic state that we can kind of get ourselves into, where we're fogged or clouded by what we think is love. And it's really interesting because once again, we are getting to revisit what we actually know love to be. We're getting to revisit how we teach one another love, how we show ourselves love. We get to recognize that knowing our own needs, being honest about our needs and truthful about them, and being able to articulate that and show ourselves that is actually showing ourselves self-love. A lot of us think that self-love is practices of self-care, but self-care and self-love are very different. Self-love is about knowing what we need individually, which is going to be different for everyone, knowing what we need and what we want in a dynamic, in a relationship, and not settling for less. And not being cruel about it, not being angry or unjust about it, but just not being afraid of expressing ourselves and not holding one another to our expression either. This, to me, is a really beautiful time. It's a really beautiful time because I I find love so very simple. Love is easy. Love is the easiest thing on this planet. It is the easiest thing. It is smooth, it is flowing, it is all-encompassing, it is expansive, it is passionate, it is focused, it is creative, it is beautiful, it's radiant, it's blissful, it's many things, it's peaceful, it's calm, it's eternal, it's many things. And we might consciously know that, and we might consciously be able to say that, but can we practice that? Can we practice not shaming ourselves for feeling a certain way? Can we practice observing ourselves enough to question without getting triggered by even asking ourselves a question? Oh, I wonder why I feel that way. Oh, isn't that interesting? Because this is what's really interesting as well to me personally, is that this time is inviting us into a space of non-duality. And this is something that we all ask for in various different ways. We ask for non-duality. We ask for polarity to come back into center and for the really far out ends of the spectrum. We're going to talk about this later on when we talk about justice and anger. These are really big and powerful things coming up right now. But let's carry on along this theme of relationships and love. To me and my truth, and I wonder if this is your truth too, but to me, love is the most simplest thing. And it is our natural state to feel love. But a lot of us don't really fully know what love is. And that's not a criticism or a judgment. That's just the reality of what it is to grow up in a dysfunctional world, where everyone in that world has some form of PTSD. And another way of phrasing that, a little bit more of a gentler way of phrasing that, is we're all fragmented. We all have parts of ourselves that are stuck in these moments in time where we've experienced an emotion and we haven't processed it. That's all that means. That's all what trauma is. That's what PTSD is where there is emotion unprocessed, stuck, right? And with it is a thought and a belief that is stuck, a memory that is stuck. Now, what's really fascinating to observe, and sometimes we can get a little bit, we might enjoy eclipses in the way that we know that things are going to come up to purge, and that's really delicious for some people because they know that they are here for great things. They know they're here for expansion. They know that they're here to enjoy a blissful and wonderful and loving life. Yet at the same time, having the courage to face the emotions that wish to arise is another thing entirely. Having the courage to have the conversation rather than run away is another thing entirely. And this is another part of what's being brought up here, because of course with this Libra full moon, Aries sun, you've got Mars energy and Venus energy. And the Mars energy is in the sun, so it's masculine. Then you have the Venus energy in the moon, feminine. So we really are in a place where we get to balance. Should we choose? Should we have the brevity, the bravery, the courage to feel and express? We get to balance all aspects of masculine and feminine within us. That is inclusive of how our inner parents show up. And I say inner parents because, once again, there can be a tendency to want to blame or project or utilize other people in our life, our mother, our father, etc., and how we were brought up and the experiences that we've had, and use that as kind of like a scapegoat to blame. It's a pin of frustration on, pin of victim mentality on. But at the same time, if we do that, then we are trapping ourselves in this prison, this mental prison, this belief prison. We can't ever feel our wholeness in that space. So I say inner parents because we get to notice, are we over mothering? Are we in the wounded archetype of our own inner mother? Are we in our sovereign mother archetype? And what that means is, if we find ourselves giving, what is the intention behind the giving? Whether it's item, whether it's love, whether it's compliment, whether it's time, whether it's touch, what is the underlying reason that we're actually doing that? Is it to glean or gain something? Or is it because inspiration is taken you and you're going, oh, how wonderful that would be. And then that's it. No expectation, non-attachment. But oftentimes we don't actually nurture and nourish ourselves. So that's the feminine energy. Now the masculine energy. Now it's interesting because we said before, like giving of the things or touch, and the act of giving is a masculine thing, right? Masculine energy goes outwards, feminine energy receives. So it's quite interesting because if we are in our wounded feminine, then we're perhaps going to be giving, and then resenting the fact that what we thought subconsciously was meant to come from it hasn't come because, well, you didn't have that conversation. That wasn't an exchange that was mutual or consensual, right? There was an underlying expectation, a condition, one might say. The same with the masculine energy as well now. A lot of, in this world, there is a very common wound that we're all healing through, and it's going to show up differently, and it might not be the forefront of people's mind or anything like that, but it's important to mention, I feel, because it might be impacting in some way, and until we can become conscious of the things that are passively flowing, we can't really change the direction of that stream. And the direction of most of our streams are going in such a way that we perhaps don't have the abundance that we want or desire. We don't have the safety, the structure, the time, the energy, things like that. These are provisional things. So in a world where we want more abundance, we want more justice, we want more fairness, we want more peace, we have to bring rise to the sacred masculine, the strong warrior, the fair warrior. So to bring light to this, we also have to recognize that we've raised our men to feel not enough. We've raised our women to be fearful of men. We've raised one another and we've birthed one another where there's this underlying energy that is coming up and out, it seems, right now. Maybe truths of the past are coming up, maybe experiences of the past are coming up, maybe injustices, maybe between genders. And this can be really challenging because it can open big doors and portals to traumas and wounds that we didn't know we had, or we didn't know our lineage had. And this is the thing about eclipses as well. It opens up lineage, ancestral karma. The body holds the ancestral karma, right? That's why we chose the body we're in, because we wanted to have all that ancestral karma. Karma is not a bad thing. Karma can be good. It can be not so good, you know, however you want to look at it. I mean, in a non-dualistic world, there's no such thing as good and bad. So, but karma can be such a brilliant thing because it's the karma that keeps us human. If we didn't have the karma in ourselves, we wouldn't stay in a human body. But it's quite nice to be human. What's really interesting is that right now, and we're going to see this a lot as well, I feel, coming up to the Aries eclipse, is the spectrum of anger coming up in men and women. And that spectrum of anger, when it's unhealthy, are two ends. Just like with other things I've spoken about, you might have heard me speak about codependency and fierce independence. They're both out of balance. They're both trauma responses. You might have seen my post recently about the fight, flight, freeze, and fawn response and how that looks, right? Most people don't realize there's a fawn response. Most people don't realize that when we're sleeping and just feel so tired that our nervous system is actually shook and we're in the freeze response. You know, most people don't realize that there are different expressions of our nervous system being triggered, and it's getting triggered every day. So we have to nourish ourselves and reprogram and rewire that, right? Most of us aren't at that level of awareness. I am going to just mention here that if that intrigues you, when I meet with Jackie White on the 9th of April, we're going to be going over that because that's going to be part of the carbon body to crystalline body workshop that we do in the Magic of the Crystalline Self. So it's recorded as well as live. So if you can't make it live on Tuesday, the 9th of April, don't worry because you'll get a replay. But if that calls to you, we're going to be going over this in more depth and details in that workshop. But just to get back to it, the spectrum of anger, you have unhealthy expression here and here on this spectrum. The unhealthy expression outwardly, so some could say this is more of a masculine expression, not holding it to men, but the masculine energy within us, is the outward expression of anger. Now that can be aggression, loud noises, slamming things, breaking things, causing conflict just for the sake of having conflict. And to relate it to love, that can be only feeling connection if there is anger or volatility. That's a big wound. That's a big red flag that we want to heal within ourselves, if that's the case. The equal and opposite of that wound, so the same wound here, but on the opposite end of the spectrum, is the internalized version of that. That's the silence where we're swallowing that anger. Or we're actually projecting it inwards, but that's something slightly different. So I'm going to mention that actually though, because I can hear and feel some people going, oh, what would that be like? Some of us may have had the experience where we felt a lot of anger and we've expressed it physically, but inwardly, which usually looks like self-harming. So when you come across a teenager or a child who's experiencing that, they don't know how to process anger. They don't know a healthy way to do that. They've never been taught. Their parents didn't know, for example. It wasn't something spoken about. So then maybe they'll have done that in their lifetime to try and process all the feelings that they felt. But let's get back to this spectrum here that to me seems quite evident right now. And perhaps let's just highlight in part of my own healing process as well, as whatever we observe usually is part of us anyway. But the spectrum of anger, the outward imbalanced is aggression, it's violence, loudness, shouting, yelling, getting in your face. That's what makes us scared, though. That gives a lot of fright. That makes us feel unsafe. That is not how you form a safe container. If you've ever experienced anything like that, which I'm going to go out on a limb and say 99 out of 100, if not 100 out of 100 of us will have experienced that, then innately within us, we'll have a fear response, a trauma response, a trigger response in our nervous system. And so it's natural that we might fear or avoid challenging conversation if the response to sharing the emotion has been in the past raised voices and people taking it personally, which is a very normal response in this world. But once again, we're in a place where we are becoming more and more conscious of ourselves. We're learning to self-regulate, which means we then learn how to co-regulate, and we get to build a conscious relationship based in love and acceptance and truth and really beautiful, passionate, but calm, safe environment. The opposite end of the imbalance spectrum, the other imbalance, is that silence. So you're swallowing your anger. Now, what happens when we swallow that anger is we are literally holding on to it. We're not processing it. And it's like we're drinking a poison, because instead of knowing how to healthily express that anger, once again, we don't. So we swallow it. We go silent. And then what happens is this is how cancers get formed as well. So when people say, or any imbalance, it doesn't necessarily just have to be cancer. Those things are parts of those things are the ways that the body is telling you, hey, you've got a thought or a belief or a perspective going on in here that your higher self doesn't agree with. So I'm going to show you with this emotion. So you're experiencing something, you're feeling anger because there's a great discord between your higher self and your embodied self. But you don't know how to process it. You don't know how to process the emotion and hear it. So we're going to swallow it. Okay, great. So that's fine. That's fine. You start to swallow it and you carry on doing that, but then you do that for a lifetime. Then what happens? Well, then you get angry parts of your body, but we don't know how to speak to our body yet. We forget, and we're just learning. We're just remembering how to connect and hear our body. We're just learning that when the body is in pain, or when the body is saying something, or when it's achy, that's a good thing. We're just learning and remembering right now that when the body is having an emotional response, that's also a good thing. It's communication. It's communication. That's a good thing. So what happens when we're silent? Well, that's an inward, that's a feminine energy. Once again, this isn't about men or women right now, because we have both masculine and feminine energies within each gender, but it is the feminine response. The wounded feminine response is to draw it in, receive it. And then what happens is, well, we hyper attune to it, don't we? We preemptively get afraid of that anger and what it might feel like. So we try and dismiss ourselves. We try detach from ourselves. We ignore ourselves. We disassociate chronically, which brings us to a fawn response, which brings us to a flight response, maybe. But anyway, going back to it, to kind of not go on for a great deal of time here. How do we then move things to a healthy expression? Well, healthy anger can be a really good thing. It's a step up from the lower vibrational emotions, such as grief or disgust or shame. It's a step up from there. So it's ascending in vibration. It's getting to a easier to manage emotion. But anger can actually be a really good thing if it's used healthily, if it's expressed healthily. So healthily expressed anger looks like, okay, I'm feeling anger, I'm observing it. I'm not going to let it control me, but I'm observing it. I can feel that fire. It's going to be purifying something. There's going to be an emotion underneath the anger, because anger is a brick wall that hides and masks the actual true emotion, the true experience, the true belief that is out of alignment. But when we get to a place of self-observation, when we get to a place of practicing not shaming ourselves for feeling and just observing, we get to a place where we can express to ourselves or to a loved one or to a partner, hey, this felt like this when you said this, this, and this. I know that you wouldn't have meant or intended that. Can you share with me what you might have meant? It opens up doorways to communicate, you see. This is kind of what I'm getting at. We also can express boundaries in this way. Boundaries should not be a thing. They should not be a thing of defense. They should be a thing of self-love, of love for your partner, or love for your friend, or love for whomever. That's what boundaries should be. There's a big movement on toxic boundaries right now, which are very much, I feel so disempowered and so repressed that I'm going to angrily express my boundaries and you can't cross them because now it's your fault. But it's kind of like saying, and I heard this from someone on, I think it was on YouTube somewhere, and she had this great analogy, and I forget her name. Someone put it in the comments if you know. But I think she was quoting someone else as well anyway. But she said, okay, she called it self-sabotage, but I'm gonna call it something slightly different. I'm gonna say, okay, if you don't express a boundary to someone, such as, and she used the example, if you don't want someone wearing shoes in your home, but you don't tell them, and they come into your home and they go into your living room wearing shoes, and you didn't want that, but you didn't communicate it, and then you get angry and you get resentful, that's not their fault. That's not boundaries, right? You know, you afterwards, after that's happened a few times, getting so angry and so pent up that you release it and you go, oh, I'm putting a boundary in, no more shoes. That's not healthy, right? That's not healthy anger. But what we want to do is we want to get to a place where we know ourselves well enough and we are able to communicate in a calm way, and we don't take it personally when someone's communicating, because nothing really should be taken personally. We're just sharing how we want to experience something with someone. Hey, we have no shoes in the house, so first time you come over, this is where the shoes go. Hey, this is where the shoes go. Oh, okay, great. Shoes to get taken off. That's a boundary set in a healthy way. If something's been happening over and over again and you've expressed the boundary initially, you can bring up a conversation and express it in a way that doesn't have to be you. I feel, using the I statements. It's interesting because right now, it seems that there is a lot of anger bubbling up within people, especially within, and may I make a sweeping statement here? I am aware that this is a sweeping statement, but I'm seeing a lot of men, male energy, men having this volatile anger come up. And we store a lot of this in our liver, we store a lot of this in our body in different places. But this volatile anger coming up to express, like shouting and bashing things and trying to control and dominate, and and I see a lot right now, or this past month, I've seen a lot of women get really inward with their anger as well. So they've got anger as well, but they don't know how to express it. So instead of communicating it, instead of expressing it in a healthy way, letting it release from their bodies, they are trying to impose boundaries that are very finite, very triggering almost. So it's really interesting because I don't know that many people are speaking about this aspect of these eclipses, which is why I'm spending so much time, it seems, talking about it. This also links in with justice, because there's that theme of justice as well, right? With these eclipses. You know, Libra brings that in. Of course, Libra does. Libra wants balance and beauty and love, respect. Aries wants respect as well, in a different way. And so we come to the topic of justice, you know, and what we forget is that injustice happens because we don't know how to express ourselves. Oh, that's a triggering statement, isn't it? That will trigger some people, and I understand that. I get that. Injustice occurs. That's part of the world that we're in. It's not fair, it's not right, of course. But what we push against will push equally back. So if you're experiencing an injustice right now, there is likely going to be a major part of you that wants to fight it, that wants to be heard. The victim part of self is saying, I've not had my story told. They're getting away with, over here we have a phrase, they're getting away with blue murder. You know, they're getting away with it. And then we want to fight it, we want to shout about it. But we're forgetting that, yes, you could do that. Absolutely. And that's quite a human approach to dealing with something that's very unjust. But what if you recognize and lean into your faith and your trust? What if you recognize that your higher self has created this in some capacity? What if you recognize that there is something within you that's created this, a split within you, that the perpetrator of the injustice outside of you is actually a mirror of an aspect within? That might be a big jump for some people. That's okay. The thing is, if any of you have experienced a lot of injustice, and in my lifetime, I've experienced some really powerful situations that could be called that, and I did at certain points. And I know from different experiences that what I pushed at, I maximized and elongated for myself, and I created some incredible dark nights through it. And it's only compassion and unconditional love that really is going to take us forward to where we're wanting to go. And if we're wanting to create a world, relationships and experiences where love is at the forefront, and we have to remember that as well. If we want to learn love in this lifetime and experience that, then we're going to be put in front of challenges that call love into question. If we want to experience faith in this lifetime, then we are going to be put in situations that are unjust. If we want to experience compassion in this lifetime, then we are going to have situations that are going to feel so oppressive and so painful. Because that's how we learn. We learn through having an experience in front of us and choosing how we want to think, feel, and managing our own energy. The emotion will shift. We don't create with our emotion, we create with the thought underneath the emotion, how we're choosing to see something. So a very simple example would be if there is a big injustice that's seeming to happen to you right now. It's just a shift in perspective. It's not happening to you, it's happening for you. Everything's working out for you. That might seem like a bit of a jump or a bit of a stretch, but just in saying that, that is a massive perspective shift, and instantly you'll feel the emotional difference, because now you're starting to think and feel more like your higher self, rather than the part of you that is stuck in the separation. this eclipse season is going to bring some of the most beautiful catalysts into your life. It may be absolutely fine for some people, but for many, depends on a few things. You know, your natal chart is one, what you came to experience is another. This series of eclipses has the potency and the promise of catapulting you so beautifully into your highest, most loving, most divinely embodied, blissful experience of life, should you release the control that you're trying to have. Should you allow and surrender and trust that you've written your book, you've written it. You just have to go page by page and trust that if something is falling apart right now, it's meant to. If something is feeling difficult right now, it's because there is something within you pushing against it, whether you see it or not. If something is feeling tight or bound, then you've created bondage around it. Attachment is another way of phrasing that. You've created attachment onto something. Therefore, you've placed condition onto something. Love is free. Love is expansive. Love is beautiful. Love is easy. Allow yourself to feel that. Allow yourself to know that. And allow yourself to know what it is to have radiant self-love, to know your own needs, your own wants, and what you deserve as well. You deserve to be the star of your show. You deserve to get the guy, or you deserve to get the girl, and you deserve to have an easy life, an abundant life, a joyful experience with so much fun and creation and play. Whatever you want, the world is yours. You're the only one in your way. And these eclipses are going to remind us that with the grace that they do. I can't remember what I titled this video, but I'm just going to what else did I put in here? Karma, anger, justice, and I don't know the last bit is relationships, I think. We are clearing our karma. And that feels hard sometimes to go through. For sure it does. Because we are revisiting every time that we were acting in an unjust way towards ourselves, where we settled for less and let our boundaries be stepped upon, and told ourselves that we wouldn't let something happen, and yet we still have done time and time and time again. We're going to get shown that that's our karma. If you're worrying about other people's, you're disassociating from your own life experience. Come back to you. Come back to what fills your heart with joy. Who fills your heart with joy? How they're embodied right now. How you wish to embody right now. Follow your heart. I'll always lead you home. So much love to each and every one of you. Have a wonderful, wonderful end of March.